Thomas gripped the steering wheel a little tighter as his hands were sweating, and he tried to disguise his nervousness while looking in the rear-view mirror. Beside him, Elisa was adjusting the brown hair that framed her delicate face. "They're going to love you," Thomas said, trying to convince himself as much as her. It was the first time Elisa would be meeting his family, an important step after 5 months of dating. Thomas was the youngest. He was 28 years old and had a shy smile he had inherited from his mother. He had always been the most introspective among his siblings, observant, careful with words and gestures. "I'm nervous," confessed Elisa, adjusting the skirt of her floral dress. "What if they don't like me?" Thomas smiled, holding her hand. "It's impossible not to like you." Thomas's parents' house was in a quiet neighborhood, with old trees lining the sidewalks and well-kept gardens. It was a construction from the 80s with a spacious porch and large windows. As they walked to the entrance, he told Elisa how his brother, Michael, used to climb that huge tree in the backyard, and how he himself broke his arm, trying to imitate him at the age of 7. "Mum panicked, but Dad carried me to the car singing some silly song to make me stop crying," he recalled with a nostalgic smile. Upon opening the door, they were greeted by the unmistakable smell of the Sunday roast that Lauren, his mother, had been preparing for years following his grandmother's recipe. Thomas took a deep breath, instantly feeling at home. What they didn't expect to find, however, was the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. Not polite or restrained laughter, but genuine guffaws, the kind that make your eyes water. Guiding Elisa through the spacious and cozy living room, with beige linen sofas and colourful cushions, Thomas found his parents in the kitchen, laughing like teenagers while attempting to prepare some dessert. Lauren, at 58 years old and with grey hair she refused to dye, had a flower-stained blouse and small wrinkles around her eyes that deepened when she smiled. Sean, his father, at 62 years old, and sporting a well-trimmed beard that had turned completely white in recent years, was trying to balance a spoonful of cream while making a joke that they couldn't hear from the living room. "Son!" Lauren exclaimed upon seeing them, opening her arms without caring about the flower. "And you must be Elisa. We finally meet the girl who stole our boy's heart." As the introductions were happening, the doorbell rang again. It was Michael, Thomas's older brother, arriving with his wife Sophia and little Ben, 4 years old, who ran to hug his grandparents as soon as he entered. Michael, at 35 years old, was the opposite of Thomas in many aspects. Extroverted, he spoke loudly, took up spaces with his striking presence, always livening up family gatherings. He hugged his brother tightly and scrutinized Elisa with an appraising look before breaking into an approving smile. They were all in the living room chatting animatedly when Elisa observed Lauren and Sean in the kitchen. They worked in perfect harmony, as if dancing, anticipating each other's moves. Lauren would pass a bowl and Sean's hand would already be outstretched to catch it. He would reach for the salt, and she already had the space cleared on the counter. "Your parents have so much fun together, don't they?" Elisa commented to Thomas, between a sip of juice and a smile. "They look like 2 teenagers dating." There was a brief moment of silence. Thomas and Michael exchanged glances loaded with meaning, a silent communication that only siblings understand. Michael curled his lips into a discreet, almost nostalgic smile, while Thomas replied, "They've fought hard to get here." And then, as if memory opened its doors in gentle and intense waves, deep conversations, difficult decisions, and moments where silence weighed more than words came to the surface. But among all, there was an episode that marked each family member, and that's where everything began to change. The day Lauren decided to renovate the living room. At the time, years earlier, Thomas was 12 years old and Michael 19. It was an ordinary Saturday, or at least it started as one. Their mother had woken up excited, with plans to renovate the living room. "I need colour in this house," she said as they had coffee. Their father just nodded without taking his eyes off the newspaper. By that time, the silences between them were already frequent, prolonged, heavy as lead. Lauren was 42 years old, still with brown hair and a sparkle in her eyes that gradually faded. She worked as a dentist, always full of energy and friendliness, to share with her patients. Sean, at 46, was a manager at a construction company. In recent years he had started arriving home later and later, always justifying it with meetings, deadlines, responsibilities. At first, only once a week. Then, almost every day. On that Saturday, Thomas helped his mother choose the paint, a soft yellow that she said brings the sun indoors even on cloudy days. They spent the morning moving furniture, covering the sofa and carpet with protective tarps. His father left early, saying he needed to take care of some things at work. "On a Saturday?" Lauren asked, with a voice that tried to sound casual, but Thomas noticed the subtle tremor. "The project's deadline is tight," was Sean's automatic response, already at the door. Michael was in college and only came home on weekends. That day he helped paint the walls until lunch, then went out to meet friends. Thomas stayed with his mother, organising the photo frames and choosing where to hang the new pictures she had bought. "I'll look for the bubble level in your father's desk," Lauren said in the middle of the afternoon while trying to align a frame with family photographs. Thomas was sitting on the floor, sorting out the new pillows she had bought, shades of green and blue that matched the yellow on the walls, when he heard the silence. A silence so deep it seemed to make noise. He looked up and saw his mother standing next to the desk, holding some papers as if they were made of glass. Her face had lost all its colour. "Mum?" She did not respond. Holding the papers in her hand, she slowly sat down on the staircase step. Thomas approached, concerned, and saw the heading on the documents. Divorce petition. And his father's signature, firm, definitive, dated 3 weeks ago. "Mum!" he called again with the small voice of a frightened boy. She lifted her eyes and Thomas would never forget that look. It was not anger, nor sadness, but such deep disappointment that it seemed to have altered something fundamental in her expression. "Go to your room, Thomas," she requested with an oddly calm voice. "I'll call your brother." The following hours were confusing. Thomas heard raised voices. His brother arrived first, then his father. There was crying, doors slamming. At night, his mother entered his room with a small suitcase. "We're going to spend a few days at Grandma's house," she said, trying to smile. "Pack your things, dear." For 3 weeks they stayed at the maternal grandmother's house. Thomas remembered tense phone calls, whispered conversations, and his grandmother telling Lauren, "You deserve more than this, my dear. You've always been too strong for your own good." Meanwhile, Sean was alone in the house. For the first time in years, he faced the silence he had cultivated himself. The absence of Lauren and the children created an echo that reverberated through the freshly painted walls, the corners of the empty kitchen, and the dark hallways at night. He made the decision to separate on a foolish impulse, almost like someone signing a contract without reading the clauses. In the environment he lived in, divorce was already treated with naturalness, marriages broken for trivial reasons, small grievances that no one had the patience to heal. But just seeing Lauren with the papers in her hands, her eyes watery, the children silent, confused and hurt, it hit hard. He already regretted it. Those documents had been stored in the drawer for days, like a weight he didn't have the courage to remove from there, nor the courage to face Lauren. Instead of confronting the problems, he chose the quickest, yet most cowardly route. And now, everything hurt. It was during this time that Sean sought out Richard, his friend of decades, a sensible man with a 30-year marriage. They met in a cafe near work, and Sean, for the first time, spoke about how he had distanced himself without realizing it, how work colleagues, younger men, single or in second marriages, had subtly influenced his choices. "You can't rebuild anything with a good person if you're surrounded by people pushing you over the edge," Richard said, while calmly stirring his coffee. "Stay with those who want to see your marriage work, not those who encourage you to give up." Those words hit Sean like a punch. He realized how he had started to undervalue family dinners, how he valued the approval of colleagues who invited him to happy hours more than Lauren's smile when he arrived on time. There was no other woman, as Lauren initially suspected, but there were other values, other priorities he had placed above his family. The next day, Sean drove to his mother-in-law's house. He asked to speak with Lauren in private. "I didn't come to ask you to come back," he said, surprising her. "I came to apologize for being cowardly, for making decisions on my own when we promised 20 years ago that we would face everything together." Lauren didn't respond immediately. Her eyes, however, lost a bit of that hard disappointment, replaced by a cautious curiosity. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she finally said. "I know," he nodded. "I'm not asking for immediate trust, I'm asking for a chance to rebuild brick by brick if you want to." A week later, Lauren and the boys returned home. It was not a triumphant return, nor was it full of sweet promises. It was a quiet, careful beginning, filled with contained expectations and fear of new disappointments. Sean started working fewer overtime hours. He began to participate more in the conversations at the table, to ask about each other's day. Lauren, in turn, kept a protective distance. She didn't want to offer her heart again only to have it neglected. But at the same time, deep down in her heart, she wanted them to work out, to be together as a family again. The following months were of slow rebuilding. There were discussions, difficult moments, nights when Lauren cried alone in the bathroom, remembering the signed paper she found in that desk. There were moments when Sean felt he was rowing against the current, that perhaps it was too late. But there were also small breakthroughs. The first time Lauren genuinely laughed at something he said 4 months later. The first spontaneous touch when she held his hand during a movie 6 months later. The first time she said "I love you" again, almost a year later. For Thomas and Michael, that period was a silent but impactful lesson. They saw their father learn humility. They saw their mother learn to set boundaries. They saw that love was not just a feeling but a daily decision, a constant effort. Now, looking at their parents in the kitchen, laughing while preparing dessert, Thomas felt a lump in his throat. Elisa noticed the emotion in his eyes. "Is there something I don't know?" she asked softly, curious about her siblings' reactions. Thomas smiled, holding her hand. "One day I'll tell you the whole story," he promised. "But what matters is that they taught us true love isn't just about starting together. It's choosing to stay together, even when it would be easier to give up." At that moment, Lauren and Sean returned from the kitchen carrying a perfectly golden apple pie. Lauren slightly stumbled on the rug, and Sean caught her naturally, as if their bodies knew exactly how to fit together after decades together. "Careful, dear," he said softly, with a look that spoke of much more than just a pie in danger. "Always taking care of me," she replied with a smile that their children recognized as the same one from years ago, when she was a child and everything seemed perfect. And in that moment, for them, it was the greatest proof that something broken could not only be fixed, but could become even stronger and more beautiful than before. Like kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, turning scars into beauty. "To family," said Sean, raising his glass. "And to the stories that brought us here." The glasses clinked as outside, the sun slowly set, painting the room with the same golden hue as that afternoon so many years ago, when Lauren decided to bring colour to the walls and unknowingly embarked on a journey that would save her marriage. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.